Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second live Q&A with Gutenberg. I am I guess I'll be the MC and user guy, Joe Castabona. I've got Zach Gordon, our developer extraordinaire, and we have special guest, Birgit. I didn't ask how to say your last name, so I'm going to guess. Polly Hack? Polly Hack?
Works fine.
All right, cool. Birgit runs Gutenberg Times, and so she's going to be joining us talking about answering questions about client and onboarding and training stuff. So if you have any questions, how do I handle Gutenberg for my clients and things like that, Birgit is the person to ask those questions to. Before we get into the live Q&A, I do want to mention our amazing sponsor, GiveWP.
Woohoo!
They
Woohoo!
are
Yes.
awesome. They are making it possible for us to do these events for free. You can read all about them at gutenberg.courses/ask us or ask-us. One of those. Ask us. No dash. That's good. That's the right URL. So they are a donations plugin and they are free with premium add-ons. So if you decide today, hey, I want to start taking donations on my website for the content I'm doing or for a cause, then Give is the plugin that you absolutely need. So easy to set up. And if you want to see how it works from a user standpoint, head over to gutenberg.courses/ask us and give it a whirl yourself. We've got some donations set up there. Any donation to help offset the cost of running these events and things like that is super helpful. So thanks again to Give for sponsoring this event and all of these events.
I'll just throw in at the end there too, like so many great WordPress companies, these are real human beings that are amazing people, giving people jobs, improving people's lives, and just genuine, caring, intelligent, smart folks. So let's also give a shout out to the true human beings behind GiveWP or Give.
Yeah, absolutely. They are fantastic. I can't say enough nice things about them. I'll also just add, if you are in the advanced WP group on Facebook, Matt Cromwell of Give fame is also doing like a Gutenberg interview series. That's very cool. His first one was with Joost de Valk. So definitely go check that out too. So we will list all of this somewhere maybe in the chat so you guys don't have to remember all of the URLs. But for now, let's jump into it. So let's talk to Birgit first. Birgit, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, hello everybody, and thank you to Zach and Joe to inviting me here for the live Gutenberg Q&A. My name is Birgit Polly Haag, and I'm the owner and founder of Poly Systems, which has been in business since 2002. I've been doing web development since 1996, so I go through a lot of phases here. And the first involvement with Gutenberg, where I kind of really saw it the first time, was actually when Matt Mullenweg introduced it at WordCamp Europe in June of 2017. And afterwards, I'm also a co-organizer of a WordPress meetup, and I really wanted to have the meetup learn more about it. So I was collecting a lot of information that was out there. It was not that much back then, but it's now a lot. And I started a Storify, which is a curation tool where you can pull from a lot of different sources information in, and did updates, so either every week or every couple of weeks, or and then I heard Storify is closing its doors in May 2018. So it's only a couple of months away, and it probably would close the door before Gutenberg is released. So I needed to find a place where to put all that information and where to continue that work on curating information about Gutenberg. And this has been a very nice way to find out about all the cool tools that people put together, the new plugins that come out. It's a very vibrant community now, and the excitement is just fantastic. So I'm really glad that every night I kind of go through things that are posted and find some stuff that I can put up on GutenbergTimes.com.
And I just want to say too, thank you for doing that, because we kind of have hit a flurry time of all the news coming out and tons of people doing articles and tons of GitHub things being merged into the actual plugin. And I actually didn't even know at first that that was you behind it, because I knew you from doing the Storyfy and tracking that. So it was so cool to see it all come together. And just thanks again for coming on with us. And I think we're going to have a bunch of questions for you and get your perspective on all of that. And you've been tracking the news so great. So just shout out again. Thank you for your work.
Thank you. Doing. It's a good one. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, I've got to say it's been pretty easy for me to stay on top of things thanks to your resource. So
okay.
Anybody who's learning stuff from me, I'm learning stuff from Pierre. They should just go right to the story.
Well, I'm just putting it together. Yeah, I hardly create any original content like you guys do. Yeah, you put the videos together, you put the courses together. I'll just hope I can amplify some of your work.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, with that, let's jump into some questions. So first, we will run through the submitted questions. If there is time, we will pull from the chat and from Twitter, which I will be watching. So be sure to either tag me or Zac or Birgit in your questions on Twitter, and we'll make sure to get them answered too. So the first question is one similar to what I believe we answered 2 weeks ago. What obstacles could there be for page builders and layout with Gutenberg? I use Site Origin Builder and widgets. I have gotten comfortable with adding custom classes in the builder to traditional front-end Sass for child theming. And will we still be able to write HTML in a text view? So I will say that Gutenberg is not a page builder yet, at least. The way it's going to affect page builders, the plugins, remains to be seen, because it's really up to the plugin developer to figure out how they want to work within Gutenberg. A few facts about Gutenberg is that shortcodes will be handled the same way. So I'm not sure about Site Origin, but if you use like Visual Composer, that's very shortcode driven. Shortcodes will work the same way. They could actually work better. I know that there are some hooks that will execute the shortcode right within the Gutenberg editor. So if the plugin developer does right by the users, then you should actually see what gets generated and not just a shortcode. With resources like Beaver Builder, that page builder, at present they completely bypass the WordPress editor and they go to kind of their own thing. So it really depends on the tool you're using and what they decide they want to do with Gutenberg. So I don't know if there's anything from a development aspect. Zac,
I'll just throw out one thing. This is very user-y as well, but one thing we mentioned last time, that there are page and site builders that pop out of the editor completely and have their own experience, and our estimate guess is that those will probably still continue to exist as they are, because that can bring some flexibility. And I think we'll get into this more later, so I won't go into details, but we have some new news on nested blocks and how that's going to be opening up a lot. So I'll just throw those few things out there.
Awesome. And Birgit, do you use a page builder or anything like that with your clients?
I use a few. Most of the time when we get, so for the page builders, that's something that came out of, there are no standards out there. And when I started out with WordPress, which was in 2010, I was teaching about 30 nonprofits how to move from a proprietary system to a WordPress site in a summer, during a summer workshop. And I found that it was easy to go from one site to the next, because they were all made the same way. About 3 or 4 years ago, when we get new nonprofits to work with or new clients in, there is a lot of page builders in there that are not doing it the WordPress way. So it's much harder to have that the new site being, to learn the new site and put it all together. So I'm actually embracing this Gutenberg idea, because then we get back to a standard way to put things together. It's I saw the need, yeah, why people are doing it, but I also see developers just using one page builder and then make that the experience, and that's not the experience when that client wants to change a theme, wants to change plugins, and there are incompatibilities that are really kind of hindering the freedom that we are so about of getting the information into the site and out of the site when we want to change things. So I use page builder site origin, and I have not yet done a lot of testing, but it's just kind of, and Gutenberg really will, for most of the clients, say, okay, we don't need the page builder anymore. We can just use it out of the box from WordPress, because what is page builder is kind of pulling in additional information, like a list of posts, or a list of, or a gallery, or making multiple columns designs. That is all going to be in the Gutenberg editor or in WordPress 5.0 once it comes out. Yeah. So,
Birgit, let me ask you this, and I'm sure it's a big question, but your best guess, because I think a lot of people have wondered, oh no, what are we going to do? We're going to have thousands of hours of billable time as soon as this drops. Do you think, and in your own experience, is this something that if someone's on a page builder that could be potentially replaced by Gutenberg, do you need to have this ready when 5.0 drops? Or do you see kind of a grace period where you could still use the default setup and then maybe pull them into staging and experiment for a while until you get there? What's your take on that approach there?
well, it depends on the website itself, on the every website. So you have three options pretty much. You can say, okay, what a lot of people do is they are not updating right away to the new version. They say, oh, we wait till the kinks are out and update 3 or 4 months later, which is perfectly fine. And I know there are
probably not a bad idea for some
right,
reason. That's right.
especially that big. And there are sites out there that are still on 3.7, 3.8. And I looked at the numbers. It's only about 60% are actually on a version that's 4, has a 4 in front of them. So that's certainly a path to go to. Say, okay, we wait with the update. We stay on 4.9, 4.9.8 or 9 or whatever it's going to be. That's one path. The other path is when you say, okay, I want to update 5.0 for whatever reason. My hosting makes me, my consultant makes me. You can always install the classic editor plugin that keeps it pre-Gutenberg, so to speak, the whole editing experience. And I heard on the Advanced WP live, I don't know if you listened to it, but Joost said from Joost SEO said, well, with 8 million or something like that installations, we plan for us to do both ways, classic editor and Gutenberg, for at least 3 years after it.
Wow.
And that is really amazing. Yeah, but that's something that a plugin developer or a theme, no, not theme so much, but any plugin developer that taps into the editor, there are quite a few plugins that are not touched at all. Yeah, we'll have to kind of think of, especially the premium plugins, to support both ways further. And I'm running Gutenberg on live sites now, but they are not out. They don't use a page builder. They use just and they use the Genesis framework, and that works just fine. Yeah, that's the editing experience is wonderful, and the theme behaves. So, yay! So these are the three ways to do that. Yeah.
Cool. That's a great response. Thank you for fielding that.
Yeah,
You're
awesome.
welcome.
Awesome. And while we're kind of in the same vein of client stuff, since our last QA, Morten Rand Hendrickson posted this thought that we need to come up with a plan to phase out using the term Gutenberg, right? It's something that I'm sure a bunch of us have thought about internally, but when WordPress 5.0 comes out, it's just going to be WordPress. You know, it's not going to be, there's not going to be a plugin. It's just going to be the WordPress editor. So uh, I think that we probably all have a couple of thoughts on this, and I'll let either Zach or Birgit go first with what are your thoughts, and how do you plan to kind of phase out using the term Gutenberg? Like, when should we do it? What's the best plan of action?
Birgit, I'll let you handle that first, but I'm just going to let folks know that you've probably heard this mentioned, but if you haven't read the GitHub thread, I'm just going to post this up in the chat now because definitely worth reading. There's a lot of opinions and they don't all agree.
Right,
Hashtag
right.
WordPress.
And I think we all three wouldn't be agree. I'm taking it a little bit. Okay, yeah. If you have a product around Gutenberg, I think it's not a good idea to do everything kind of branded that way if you want to do the same thing over and over again for the next 2 years. But I think for 2018, having something being Gutenberg ready or Gutenberg courses, yeah, is certainly helpful because that's how it's now in the community, yeah, in terms of, okay, before and after. If you give it a name, it's easier to talk about. But I think the normal user, the user of WordPress, doesn't even know about Gutenberg yet, or doesn't even have to know that there is something new. They see the new editor, somebody's gonna tell them, okay, and it's new there, and they pick up right where they left off. In the editor. So, and they have a very pleasant experience. We, or the developers, theme developers, plugin developers, consultants that do custom development, they have the heavy lifting to do. Yeah, for your courses, yeah, I would say let them run for a while. Yeah, until people catch up, and then you change the domain name, and you already have platforms where you have your courses. So you are just kind of integrating them there. I know that from the State of the Word of Matt Mullenweg at the Nashville WordCamp US, there actually the word Gutenberg still is, even if the editor is released, it will be Gutenberg, the customizer. Kind of, yeah, there will still, Gutenberg will come out of the team's wordings and releases, because the next focus is going to be the customizer. Yeah, so I don't know what the team is going to do. Yeah,
Joe, do you want to take the next stab? Because I have so many thoughts on this on a couple different levels.
Yeah, totally. And I'm kind of, I read Morton's original post, but I haven't read the comments, so I'm maybe unclean in that sense, I guess. My general thought is it really depends on your audience, right? Zach and I have, for example, two very different courses. Um, we're targeting different people. I think if you're targeting developers, continue to use Gutenberg as long as Gutenberg makes sense, right? Because that's the thing that not just has like the SEO juice, right? But it's that's what people are referring to the project as. For me, I'm targeting users, how to use Gutenberg. So yeah, I'm taking advantage of the fact that people in the community right now want to know how Gutenberg works, and they're going to have to get the Gutenberg plugin. But right around the time that WordPress 5.0 RC1 comes out, I'm going to be changing the name to an introduction to the new WordPress editor, because when it does roll out, users who are not as deeply embedded in the WordPress community as we are going to have no idea what's Gutenberg. Is that a plugin? Is that a different software? What's happening to WordPress? So I really think it depends on who your audience is. I think for the greater community, yeah, we're not going to say WordPress 5.0 with Gutenberg. I don't think that's the right choice. But if we're talking to each other, yeah, well, we're moving Project Gutenberg onto the customizer. So that's my answer in a nutshell.
So, such a good question. And again, I don't think it's a straight answer. I think if you're submitting WordCamp talks this year, because that's a big one, WordCamp talks and meetup groups, I like the idea, especially if it's user focused. maybe even a little developer, call it the new WordPress editor, like stuff coming in the new WordPress editor. And maybe at most, like what we've started to do a little bit is sometimes using Gutenberg in quotation marks, right? So the new Gutenberg. So that's kind of like the in-between phasing out. And I agree totally that once it's in core, stop calling it Gutenberg if what you're talking about is something that's in WordPress itself, right? Now, here's where it gets a little complicated. Chances are when 5.0 rolls out, the Gutenberg plugin may still exist. And I may be a little bit wrong, but my understanding is they're still going to add it to the customizer. They still got to do with widgets. And this stuff needs to live somewhere. So whether that's like some kind of beta bleeding edge verge of WordPress, or more likely how they've done in the past is it's like a featured plugin. So I have a feeling that Gutenberg may remain a thing, but it's not going to be the same thing a year from now that it is now, right? So right now we're talking about Gutenberg as the editor. But what happens once the editor becomes in core, and then there's a featured plugin that's like, hey, how to integrate Gutenberg with the customizer and do everything there, right? That's a whole different type of Gutenberg. So I think like what we might call Project Gutenberg may change over time. And so in that sense, we have to be somewhat adaptable. Again, if it's in core and you're talking about something, just call it the editor. And there's been a lot of questions, like in that thread, there was even a suggestion, oh, should we name it the publisher or come up with like new clever names for it? And it's the editor or the classic editor. I feel like that's already been leveled. Like we don't have to discuss that or come up with any cool solution. Now, that said, if you're marketing, we've got folks on here that have a Gutenberg.courses site, and we have folks that have a Gutenberg Times, Twitter account. And that stuff is still relevant because we've been tracking all of this. And I think that there is this kind of in-between phase. And I know both Joe and I are going to shift the names of our courses. And we have our own sites, right? We have JavaScript for WP and Creator courses where we're giving it more the generic, like vanilla names, but we still, for marketing reasons, have this. And even though I agree with the term, I also want to be real. Like if you're trying to set yourself apart, like it's hard to search for editor courses and stuff like that. So I think the Gutenberg name does help a little bit, but I'd encourage you to go get involved in that thread, because we could wish and wash all we want and throw out our opinions, but that seems to be the place where they're tracking all of this. And as you'll see, not everyone agrees. Some people are extreme on one side, some are extreme on the other. And, it's just part of having a bunch of people involved in the conversation. But I think in general, we're all roughly in agreement that as it comes into core, it'll, stop being called that name, but there's going to be some in-between period where Gutenberg still makes sense, especially for me. If the name of the plugin is Gutenberg and the name of the documentation is Gutenberg, it's hard for me to not call it Gutenberg. But I get the point.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, I didn't call my course the Introduction to the New WordPress Editor now, because the people who are most interested in it and call it by Gutenberg, and it does differentiate. And again, like, your bloggers, people who have blogs that have been set up by an agency or something like that, they might not know what Gutenberg is. It's just going to be, WordPress has changed. What does this change?
Yeah, one thing I'll throw out though, I've seen some folks start to develop some really cool blocks. So they have like a block for maps, or they have a block for displaying posts. And if your goal is to submit something into the .org repo and have a plugin that somebody can use, then I would suggest using the name block, like a map block or this block, and really use that. I don't think if you're trying to submit for the repository, even a theme, I don't know that I love the name of that there. I think if it's going into the ecosystem, into that core environment, let's drop it and just kind of refer to it in a plain way.
Yeah, and I think as a plugin developer, you need to be really conscious about the decision that your name is going to be your URL, and that's going to go away, and you can't change it afterwards very easily, except using everybody and starting from scratch.
Right. Yep. So, I mean, by all means, tag it as Gutenberg, but don't, block. Block is the nomenclature that we're using for these pieces of content within the new WordPress editor. Awesome. Great discussion. I really enjoyed that. While we're talking about blocks, we teased at this earlier. So the question says, is automatic? I'm just gonna kind of pedantically correct that it's the WordPress Open Source Foundation, right? It's all contributors, not necessarily just Automatic who's behind this. Though there are a lot of automaticians behind it. So is the Gutenberg team planning to allow blocks within columns and groups of blocks before shipping? So that's part one to this two-part question. Zach, I think you're probably more familiar with the ticket. I saw it on my phone yesterday, but it sounds like nested blocks have been merged into the latest version of the Gutenberg plugin, right?
Can we just give a round of applause for the core
Yay.
team? Wow. Again, I know I've said this before, and I'll say it every freaking opportunity I have. The WordPress community is bashed so hard on like Gutenberg in general for like fair reasons. There are things to discuss, but like, let's give some credit and gratitude to the very small amount of people who are working on this stuff. And we did finally hear that nested blocks is in the process of being merged. I don't know if that's fully or if there's still some things, but you know, it has been tagged as merged. So we are, and we just had a talk, Joe, 2 weeks ago, and we were saying, yeah, this should come into core, and 2 weeks later it's here. So that's some serious work. So what that is going to technically involve is basically just being able to have a block that you could then put blocks inside. And there will be some evolution of this. There's another thread I want to mention kind of alongside this, Joe. I'll let you bring that up later. I think you know what I'm referring to, the kind of master list of everything.
Yep.
But I think that there are some things that they want to refine and how easy it is to make something a certain column or this and that. But we've got it. We've got it. And that's so cool because that is a game changer because we don't want to be stuck in just a single column flow with everything we're doing. So very cool.
Absolutely. This kind of inches, again, still not a page builder per se, but richer content. Like you can create some pretty nifty stuff with nested block.
Oh yeah, that's really a good thing. Yeah.
Awesome.
We were all waiting for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm glad it's happening now because I was getting ready to do the February update for my course. And I would have been very upset if I updated and then it got merged in. So I know it's like the the pain of being an early adopter or first to market or whatever, but this is just the Gutenberg team is rocking and rolling over there.
So you know when the new version is coming out? The new Gutenberg version, is it Friday?
They usually do the release notes on Friday, right? So I don't think we can say for certain if we'll see nested blocks on Friday, but it's that's usually when they have their master list of updates and their dot releases. So, the follow-up or the second part of that question, I've heard talk about all the metadata being treated like a block, but what about metadata that is really related to the whole page rather than a specific piece of content on that page? That's a great question because we haven't really seen anything proof of concept of how metadata would work and how like WooCommerce is integrating their metadata and stuff like that. But Zach, maybe you could speak a little bit more to this. I think you have maybe a more solid answer than I do on this.
Yes, I want to hammer home a very important point. There is content, which is what you show up when you write out the content, and that's your content. And then you have metadata, which is information about the content or the page. And in the past, this has been a really mixed bag because we actually have used meta box fields, which should be describing our content, not actually showing content as actual content on the page, right? So if you built something with ACF, you throw the content out the window and you put all your fields on the page and you hard code them where you want them. So that convention is going to shift and go out the window. Now, that said, you can take a block and save it as metadata. And in the past, actually, I thought it was a lot more difficult technically to do this, but they've made it super simple where you just set up a block to say, save this as metadata, does it automatically. And I thought it involved a little bit more API requests and other stuff, but wow. Yeah, super simple. So that's the thing. Now, that said, if you create a meta box field, it will just go down underneath the whole editor experience, and that is metadata. Now, you still can pull out a meta field and display it on the page, but that is really meant to be something that is truly now metadata. And if your goal is to have like use Gutenberg here and then put metadata here on the editor, but then on the front end you want that meta field to like show up in the middle of your content somewhere or be part of the design, then you'd make it a block with metadata. But the meta fields will 100% still work. The other thing I want to technically throw out there is that if in the past, if you were used to building a meta field, like let's say you had a crazy repeater with image galleries and a whole bunch of JavaScript, or more specifically jQuery, that was manipulating the DOM and doing that, chances are if you go too crazy with that, it will break everything. So meta fields should really be simple meta fields. And if you're building really complex interactions for people editing that stuff, then put that in the block, because now that we have React kind of running, you don't want to start throwing in jQuery manipulating the DOM on top of that. So that's just a heads up and a warning. But again, content is different than meta, but parts of the content you can pull out and save as metadata as well.
Awesome. That sounds great. It sounds like it's working the way that we would expect it. Um, so Matt Medeiros is all up in our chat right now.
Hey Matt, what's up, buddy?
He's promoting Conductor. I'd like to see what the plan for Conductor and Gutenberg is. He's asking, is Zac dropping sick beats or explaining object-oriented coding? A little bit of both.
Yes.
That was some sweet.
Yes,
that
I
was
am.
Sweet symphony right there. Awesome. So, let's see. I also saw Jason Hoffman jumped into the chat, and we just had a question queued up on Twitter from him. Releasing a new Gutenberg block. Should I release it as an NPM module, a plugin, or other? And so Zac, I know that you just answered a pretty lengthy question, but I'm going to toss it over to you again.
I'll keep it simple. Plugins, 100%. Don't put a block in a theme. Put a block in a plugin. Now, if you have an NPM package, like technically you could host it maybe as an NPM package, but then a developer would have to like pull that in and execute it. So I don't know, unless you really had a reason to do it that way, it should not be executed via NPM. Now, one thing I will say is that down the road, we're going to come across some cool stuff, I hope. Hold on, with custom, let me finish answering this here, and then maybe we'll come back to it. But down the road, distracted myself. What was I answering again? The plugin versus NPM. Okay, what we will see is right now, like if you want to use one of the default WordPress components. So in React, a component is a small piece of code that you could import into your code and execute. So what I do think we may see is people building components that are on NPM that you could pull in that NPM package. Like let's say, I don't know an example. I just keep using this map one off the top of my head, but maybe you wanted to have a map as part of the block that you're building and somebody already coded that map functionality. You could pull that in as a package. And down the road, I do believe that most of the Gutenberg library and architecture will exist as separate packages, because right now they all exist in the global scope, which is a little weird, but makes sense, I guess. So down the road, we will see people building reusable components, which I think is brilliant, but I don't think that an actual block itself, it should really be a plugin if you want a user to use it. Now, if you're developing small little reusable snippets of code that developers can use, then that should not be a plugin. That should go completely in an NPM package. So hopefully if you understand the difference between the two, that helps you along. But a really good question, and glad someone brought that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I think maybe the good analogy here is between using let's say CF, right? CMB2 is a developer tool to help us create better, more robust meta boxes. ACF is something that you use on the front end to generate those meta boxes. So making that kind of distinction will hopefully help guide you towards whether you should use an NPM package or a plugin. Now, I do have a kind of follow-up question for Birgit here, working mostly on the client side. Are you concerned? We kind of got this question a little bit 2 weeks ago. Are you concerned that like your clients' websites, WordPress installs will just blow up with like a bunch of tiny block plugins?
Well, it's up to see. Yeah, it really depends on the client side. But we have what we're going to do is we put them all on staging, and then see if there's something we need to replicate in blocks that worked differently before. But I have not seen anything right now coming down the line that we did customize that would blow up when we do when it goes to 5.0. That we will have, I was talking with connecting with one of the plugin developers who gung-ho kind of develop a whole suite of blocks. And if you could kind of switch them off and on. And the developer communities is actually also thinking of, okay, can I switch off some of the blocks that come in or the embedded one? Because they are thinking, well, the user, the pop-up box where all the blocks are in, it's kind of hard to navigate, even with the searches and will confuse a few users. And I'm thinking they might be right to actually switch off some of the blocks. But I like Matt Mullenweg when he said 280 blocks he's aiming for in the state of the bird in WordCamp US. It was kind of, I didn't realize it then, of course, but now that I know so much about how this all gonna work, I said, yeah, I see it coming that you might have about 50 blocks in there. It's definitely a good question. But yeah, if they're all in the same API and they're all playing nice, yeah, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure we've got some smart engineers working on, maybe how to best manage that, right? So it's that remains to be seen. I just kind of wanted to get your take because I know that people can go plugin crazy on a WordPress site pretty easily, and if you have just like single serving plugins, the map block and the
Right.
Star Wars
Yes.
quote block, yeah. So,
Yeah.
Awesome. Speaking of kind of the feature set, right? What we're aiming for with Gutenberg and things like that. Matisse, I'm saying that right.
Matthias.
Mateus. Okay.
Matthias.
Yes.
He opened up a new GitHub issue yesterday called Scope and Features MVP. This seems like it's directly related to a conversation I was having on Twitter, where a few people felt like it wasn't clear what the roadmap for Gutenberg was. So this ticket or this issue basically says all of the things that are shipped, all of the things that are remaining to be shipped for 5.0, and then some of the bonus stuff. So I'll drop that in the chat now. But
Actually, I just threw it in there for you.
Oh, perfect. Awesome. So oh, this is great. I just kind of wanted to, well, Zac brought it to my attention. We thought it would be good to bring it to the attention of everybody that we now have a pretty clear roadmap of, what we can expect from Gutenberg, or for the new WordPress editor in 5.0. Nested blocks was on there. Complete extensibility and hooks outside of blocks. Drag and drop functionality for moving and adding blocks will be nice. Grid layout system, asynchronous loading, handling inline images. So a good mix of like features and then like development friendly things. So Zac, did you have any thoughts about that?
Oh, first I want to shout out, you know how I found out about this? And I track it close. Gutenberg Times. If you're not following Gutenberg Times on Twitter, please go ahead and check them out at Gutenberg Times. And thanks, Birgit, for coming on. Who curates you don't curate Birgit. You are Birgit. You curate Gutenberg Times. So
I sent some myself, but that's a different story.
Yeah, so this list is
super thank you.
And thank you. It's really funny because I remember last time I was saying, yeah, I don't even know if it's possible to come up with a list like this. And of course, the super smart folks and Mateus went ahead and did this. And again, we threw it in the chat. Go check it out. Look at how much stuff is under shipped, and look at how much stuff is left in remaining. I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. Now, some things like async loading capabilities might be a little tricky. Grid layout system that's easy to customize, but all of these already have open stuff going on. Handling inline images looks like the only one that doesn't actually have an open ticket, and that is kind of that might be important, but we'll see where that goes. And again, this is just great that this list exists and should give everybody a really good idea of what to expect and what's coming, and just remove any questions about, will this be here? Will this be here? What's the status of this? And last time we were saying, you could track all this on GitHub. It's so open what they're doing, but now we have kind of a table of contents, which is great. Again, if you're not following Gutenberg Times on Twitter, go ahead and check them out for the latest news on the new WordPress editor.
Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Birgit, for that, because that is a really nice thing to see. I'm definitely going to share that around more. So I've been doing the Gutenberg user tips for 31 days. I think we're about halfway through. And I've been getting some, I've been mentioning things that I think are cool, and then I've gotten comments here and there like, yeah, that's not that good, or this is going to make this thing a nightmare. And I've been encouraging people to go to GitHub and log an issue and get involved in the Slack. That's the best thing that people. It's a lot like, I have a lot of friends who complain about politics and then don't vote. And I'm like, well, don't complain if you're not willing to make your voice heard. So, luckily, the open source project makes it very easy to make your voice heard. You can log a GitHub issue. Anybody can log a GitHub issue, I believe. And you can, if you have a WordPress.org account, you can get access to the Slack. There are 2 channels within Slack that are specifically for Gutenberg. I think they both have the name Fire Hose at the end of them because, again, the team has been rocking and rolling. So if you want to get involved, then that is absolutely the best way to do it. There's also the feedback button right in the plugin, so you can offer feedback. You don't have to go anywhere. You just click on the feedback button in the plugin and tell them your thoughts. So I just wanted to kind of point that out. So I have at least one more submitted question, and then we've kind of been addressing. I think I've picked up everything in the chat. And this question is for Birgit. April is the target for Gutenberg, for the new WordPress editor. At what point do you say, okay, I'm going to not start any new client projects until
Good question.
we get a release candidate, right? I know this is a big concern at the enterprise level, right? Those sites are crazy. They'll have their own completely different experiences. If you're doing a blog, maybe you could just say, oh, well, we could just kind of update. You mentioned that you are running it on live sites already, but you get a fairly complex client project in, or maybe you're using ACF or a page builder. When do you decide, okay, it would be wrong for me to start a client project now when I'm going to have to charge them at least the same amount after Gutenberg is merged into core?
Yeah, I think if you have a project like that, to revamp the project plan a little bit and do say, okay, I'm not going to work with the classic editor. I'm going to work with Gutenberg, but I'm not going to release it until it's stable. Yeah, so the content creation part, that is going to be complicated, and I have to decide which way I go forward, never go backwards. Definitely a good thing to do. But I also can see that training would be a nightmare if you would start earlier with the user training and not include Gutenberg in there. So I think it's a good way. Now is a good time to talk to the people that you're working with, the project manager on the other side, and say, this comes down the pipeline. We need to adjust our project plan so it might not cost more, not a whole lot of more hours, but it definitely will have some adjustment period there. But that's normal for a larger project. Yeah, for someone who has a normal website, kind of with a brochureware blog attached to it, some some e-commerce stuff, I would say go forward, do use Gutenberg. It's already there in your designs or in the Outlook. But I would not go backwards. Yeah.
Let me ask you a follow-up question to that, because I try to teach best standards, but when I build a site, sometimes I just do it however I want, and I don't think I'm totally alone here. So if I was already comfortable with ACF, if I've been kind of doing this on the side, maybe WordPress isn't my main shtick, what's the downside or what's the risk of deciding to just go with the classic editor and have no intention in 2018 of even looking at Gutenberg?
The risk is minimal, I would say. But on the other hand, you will have people talk about the new editor, and it will come back to you, and you need to answer for that. And that you need to be prepared to have an answer. Whatever it is, it's going to be your answer. But a client will probably not accept and say, yeah, we're not doing that. That's not a good answer. And I just wanted to go back to what Joe said, April 2018. I don't think that's the target date for WordPress 5.0 to come out. If I went back and listened again to the State of the Word, Matt Mullenweg, and I met him in Tampa on when he did his Q&A, and it more sounds that Gutenberg is going to be feature complete before the merge proposal in April. It's another 8 iterations, and that will be April. And that's what we talked about when we said, okay, Gutenberg will have so many iterations as a feature plugin, and that's going to be April. And then it will be, he said, ready for the larger audience. But I don't think he meant being released in 5.0, because there are so many other things that need to be working right to get it into core. And he suggested in his talk to roll it out to WordPress.com users to see what actual users are going to do with it, that are not developers, that are not theme developers, that are not plugin developers, to see what is it, and they will learn a ton from it. And I think that's a great phase to see what happens. But that's also the phase where at the same time it's going to be the merge proposal, and all the incompatibilities with beta 1 and beta 2 will come out. I think we will have it's not going to hit, well, let's talk in June again, but I don't think it's going to hit 2018 before June 30th. I'm just not seeing it. Yeah. So the April was out of context from that State of the Word, but of course it was big on screen, but it was not the release of 5.0.
Let me ask one other thing there, because for folks who don't know, the folks in Florida and down in Tampa got a really special. Matt showed up to a meetup group and answered all these questions. Did you hear anything down there, or did stuff get raised that didn't come up at State of the Word? Did you get some kind of secret new news, or were things solidified? I mean, you just talked about the release date, so I think that that's really good. But was there anything else that came up for those of us who weren't there? Or didn't know what happened?
No, I was actually surprised that for that Q&A session, there were not a whole lot of Gutenberg questions. Either everybody already had listened to the State of the Word and got through the 2 hours of listening to Q&A there, or it wasn't all that yet on the radar. So I don't know why that was, but there was very interesting question was for that. There's a lot of flack that the team received on the review side of Gutenberg plugin, with a lot of 1-star review, and some of them are not particularly nice formulated. And Matt had this question like, how do you deal with all this negativity and all? And he was very gracious about it and said, you know, you learn from those people who complain the most, actually the most. You just need to listen, because they are the ones that care so much that they get worked up about it. And you just need to find a way to figure out what exactly it is that is the problem there, and then work on that until you get it solved.
I know some people criticize him. I love listening to Matt speak. I wish I could be more suave in how I responded to everything as well. He's got a definite tact to it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's that Southern hospitality. You learn that from Texas. You know, I'm like a rambunctious New Yorker when I get mad.
You're more European than anybody else in the
I'm 100% New York Italian. I got that temper in me. But anyway, that's a great answer. And Birgit, you actually answered another question that we got, which was, will Gutenberg be rolling out to WordPress.com users? I was ready to wildly speculate that the WordPress.com users would be a good testing ground for Gutenberg when it's ready to get merged in. So it sounds like that seems to be the case, which is good. It's also, I mean, in that same vein, then it's also good that uh, other plugins, premium plugins are allowed on WordPress.com now, right? I think that is going to be I know that got a lot of criticism too, but in this case, in testing major software updates, that'll be very helpful. And I was at the Philly Burbs meetup on Monday. Speaking of software updates and everything we were just kind of talking about, and we had a great panel of people. We had Brad Williams from Web Dev Studios, we had Tracy Levesque from Yikes, um, talking about like the client work. Tracy does a little bit of the plugin side too. We had Jason Coleman from Paid Memberships Pro, and we had Jess Riley who does design and development work in WordPress too. And they were
Oh dear.
they were talking about how I'm like all flustered now. They were talking about how a software updates, right? This Gutenberg is a big piece of software, but it's still software updates. So that's something to think about. We maybe saw this with the customizer and a few other things, but this is being done out in the open, and we're going to see more updates like that. There's going to be some growing pains in the beginning, but soon it will be, the standard operating procedure to use the new WordPress editor. So, I don't see I don't see any other questions, though some very nice
Actually,
comments.
I have two quick ones. One question I've been getting is, should I be learning how to use Webpack and Babel and ES6 and all this other stuff? And I 100% say yes. It is time, and let's not give ourselves the excuse of like, oh, we're in WordPress, we don't need to learn the right way to do things and the way the rest of the world does it. So please, folks, take the time. It's something that I cover in my course. And actually, when I do my update, I'm going to release a free course that is just how to use these tools so that we have no more excuses of not to use them. I know it takes a little learning. It does take a little used to. It's not familiar, but it is, I don't know, 1,000 times better and easier to code this stuff when you're using JSX, for example, and using Webpack to compile. So that was one question I got real quick. I just want to throw that out. Another one we got is blocks working with custom post types, and if that's possible and how we could do that. And again, that is something that should 100% be working. And not just that, but we also have block templates. So what you could do is in a theme, you could say, hey, when I have my books template and somebody, or books custom post type, and somebody goes and they add a new book, it will automatically show certain fields in certain orders, and you could either lock it in or give them the ability to add other ones. And this is so beautiful, and it kind of almost replaces an ACF type build. So I'm really excited for that and just want to throw that out there. One other technical question we have is, was around, let me see here. Oh, meta fields. So one of the tricky things is this. Let's imagine you have a site that's built with ACF or pods or whatever you're using, and you don't really have anything stored as the content. All your content is stored as meta fields. Well, how are you going to migrate that over, right? If you're going from that into Gutenberg, your Gutenberg blocks won't know what that meta field is. And this is, I'm so glad that the engineering has worked this out. So basically, if you create new blocks and you tie them to existing metabox fields, they will automatically populate those blocks for you. So technically speaking, and this may take a little customization and work, you should be able to go from having an ACF kind of custom field setup to building your blocks a certain way or getting the right blocks in place and identifying the metadata, and then it should just seamlessly port it over. And if you have templates laying it out right, it should work. Now, what you may need to refine is on the front end, your templates, your theme templates that have like the price and the this and the this and the this field here, that will all become the content, and you'll just need to make sure that all your blocks are arranged properly. So I don't know, this kind of comes into your area too, Birgit. Maybe you could, as a follow-up, because I think that was all the comments except just how great Joe is looking, which I just want to second. We're going to ask your secrets to sexiness at the end here, I hope, because I want a beard like you, man. I can't do it. But Birgit, what do you think about that with how does a company handle, are you going to be charging people to convert their theme over to something that works with Gutenberg? And what are your approaches and thoughts around that? I know that that's a pretty big question for some folks out there.
Yes, and yeah, if I had, so I have a few sites where we have that, and it's just a normal update. Yeah, it's kind of nothing stays static in the web. Yeah, and when I say, okay, everybody needs to learn new things, well, the time is now to learn new things, but we will definitely. That's part of the, and we already have those conversations with our clients to say, okay, 2018, we need to look at the budget that you have for the project and maybe remove or move some stuff that was in there before to a later date because we have this revamp to do, or we need to. But this comes all out when we do also testing. We started already putting sites on staging sites that haven't had it and go through it and test it with the client and see, okay, is there something we need to change, or do we push it into 19 with a classic editor because we ACF and what we have now kind of works. And I think it's a 50-50 chance that we do it with one client, push it into 19, and with one client, we just will start in May or something like that to kind of work on that. So it really depends on your relationship with the client to have that conversation, but there will be definitely charges on our side.
So it's not necessarily a situation where you should just assume, oh no, WordPress updates, now we have 100 hours of billable work and we need to take all the responsibility for this. You think that there's a smart way to kind of dial and work with
Absolutely, that? Yeah. Like a Microsoft person who has a Windows 10 update where none of the other software works. Because, and are you going to do, that's not your responsibility. So, and you will get paid, that's your job, but it's not, not Microsoft's gonna pay for it. And the contractor wouldn't, then if the contractor is not paid, it's not gonna work.
I love that example of just using Microsoft or Windows, because then it's like, who's gonna argue that, right? Who's gonna say, it just kind of stops the whole conversation. So I love that response. It's a good one.
Yeah, Microsoft, nobody's entirely useless. One can always serve as a bad example.
Awesome. Well, I will just to kind of put a exclamation point on that statement. I think it really comes down to client communication. Be open with them, like you said earlier, and say, hey, this thing is coming. How should we handle it? We're a team. I'm here for you. Things like that. So we have one more question, then we are out of time. Karen asked, is there any official word from ACF on how they will integrate and or convert? And they have announced that they will be Gutenberg ready. So keep an eye on any news from ACF on how they're going to do that. So
they said, they said it already in November. Kind of following that, But of course, what I find is the whole community kind of wakes up to it. And now we can do, okay, there are certain things that are already said. Yeah, let's kind of go back and look for them. And that's what my Storyfy is about. We can track it all. Yeah. Gutenberg.
Awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. And I do want to mention just one more time that these live Q&As are sponsored in part by Give. Give is an incredible donations platform for WordPress that will be Gutenberg ready. They are a free plugin that has premium add-ons, and you can see it in action over at gutenberg.courses/askus. As we said at the top of the show, they are a great team. They are dedicated to the WordPress community, and it's an excellent plugin. So absolutely check that out. So Birgit, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I say thank you to Birgit. Thank you for the work you're doing. Folks, go follow her, check her stuff out. I mean, this is how we're finding out about some of this. So just grateful for the time that it is obviously taking you to moderate this. So thank you again for your work. It's valuable.
Absolutely. And thanks to everybody who tuned in to the live Q&A. Thanks to everybody watching the recording later. And if you have any questions, go ahead and submit them at gutenberg.courses/askus. Until next time, have fun. Oh, right. Good call. Zac, do you want to say this? Because I'm clearly flustered.
Okay, first of all, folks, please tell Joe how much you love him in the chat. This is working really well. I see a little color coming into the cheeks. No, I just want to say that, first of all, Joe and I have tried to price our courses at a really affordable price, almost a price where if you're running a company and you're charging people for work and they're paying billable hours, that like this should be a no-brainer. It should not be a big budget ticket. That said, if you run or work with a meetup group or a WordCamp, we're offering 50% discounts on both of our courses to everybody in your community. So if you're either in a community or you run it, ping us, either Joe or I privately, and we're going to set you up with that. People ask us all the time, hey, do you have discounts for this? Or I just want a discount for that. Like, we're not really doing so much the individual discount, but we're doing this for the community. And if you have a community event, Birgit, I think we even did this with you, right? And that was great. Joe, you ran a meetup group. I'm waiting to see when DC is going to do our Gutenberg thing, but we really want to help you out and just make this no-brainer for you to get this stuff, learn it ahead of time, and build your plugins, train your users, whatever you need to do. So again, this is for the community. WordCamps, meetup groups, reach out to us. No questions asked. We'll just take a day to create coupon codes and get that to you. So just want to plug that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Great point. Thanks for the kind comments about the courses too. Zac and I are putting a ton of work into them. So, all right. Cool. Thanks everybody. Until next time, have fun, play with Gutenberg. I almost had my podcast sign off, right? So let's, I'll modify a little bit. Get out there and block something. Bye, everybody.
Keep on learning and happy Gutenberging. Yeah.
Yes.
Ciao, everyone.
Bye.